Hello and welcome to the 2016 annual PSAT Strategies for Success workshop. My name is Lauren Gaggioli. I am going to be guiding you through today. We are going to talk all about the PSAT and what is expected of you, why it's important, and then we will also discuss, of course, some strategies for success on this test. So I'm just taking a look around. It's just me. I'm manning all of the tech and teaching at the same time, so it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I am just going to make sure that everybody's getting in and feeling comfortable and settled, and then we will go ahead and dive in, and I'm going to share some of my favorite tips for doing well and keeping calm on this test. One thing that will be included as well is a worksheet for this exam. So I'm going to go ahead and type this in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this as the first comment. So here is your PSAT worksheet. If you are watching a replay, there is going to be a link below the video you're watching, whether you're watching on YouTube or whether you're watching from my site. You can find a link to the Strategies for Success worksheet, and I link up practice tests, and I link up some resources on about like the PSAT and understanding qualifications and getting that information from the horse's mouth, as it were. So I think that's really important wherever possible, going to the source for information. And so feel free, hop on. If you're watching me live, you can go ahead and click that link. I would also love to get to know who's here today. So if you are in and watching live, please type into the chat. The chat's the main way we're going to engage here. So type into the chat where you saw that the PSAT worksheet. Go ahead and type in there where you're from and what grade you and or your student is. If I have parents watching, what grade your student is. Students, if you could just type in your grade, it's going to be really helpful to me to know sort of who's here, who's hanging out, and get to know you before we kick this off officially. Great. I've got San Diego, 11th grade, Florida, 11th grade. Awesome. Oh, good. We've got some sophomores in the mix. That's awesome. So glad to see that. All righty. Let's see. Couple of juniors. Great. Got some juniors coming in here. Grass Valley. Awesome. Long Beach. Great. I've got some California folks. Awesome. That's where I am. I'm in San Diego. Spencer in the grand state of Texas. I love it. 11th grade. Awesome. Juniors, 9th grade. Wow, we've got early birds, and I am so excited to hear that, because the earlier you're here, the more calm and serene this process can be. So that's really, really important. Hi, Ryan. Oh, so great to see you guys here. Awesome. Let's see. Thank you. I've got Duncan commenting on my pictures. This is my wall of nerdiness that I just put together. I'm very pleased. I've got a little BB-8. Got some droid action going on. Wally, Indy's here. Got my Shark for Jaws. I also have Jurassic Park behind me. So these are like the movies I grew up with. For those of you who've been with me for a while, you probably know I'm a just bona fide Disney nerd. So that explains a lot of the stuff behind me, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. Great. We've got some more juniors, more California, Brooklyn from Michigan. Fantastic. Well, thank you guys all for joining me. It's so exciting to have this many people on live. We had a great session last year. I wish the PSAT was twice a year, because I have so much fun getting to know you guys. Just some rules of the road before we head off. Because there are so many, we have almost 70 people on live here. That's a lot. So, as I said at the beginning, it's just me. So as you guys are coming up with questions and having some questions about stuff, please, when you type in a question about the PSAT, use the Q&A. So if you look next to the left of the chat, chat little field, you can see that you can choose to chat, which is going to be you guys talking. I'll check in occasionally, but obviously I'm going to be delivering information. So, that might be kind of hard for me to man because this is going to start scrolling really fast, especially if I have some jokesters in the mix like I did last year. There were some really funny comments going on. If you hit Q&A, so if you go to the green Q&A, it's a little drop down button, you can type in a question and that will pop into a different field for me. Just like that, Duncan. Thank you. So if you guys can see that Duncan asked a question and it marked it as read, it's just going to be helpful for me so that I make sure that I address all the questions. What I ask is that towards the beginning of the presentation, we keep questions to PSAT topics exactly. And it's going to be a little annoying. I'm going to have to read all the questions out. And the reason I'm going to read all the questions out is that you guys are looking at the chat, but anybody watching the replay won't necessarily have access to that. So it's important that I fully state what the question is before I start to answer it so that anybody watching the replay has the full lay of the land. So Duncan's got the hang of it. So if you guys have questions as we go, please keep them to PSAT information. But as I'm going to show you, I teach the SAT and I teach the ACT. So I'm going to we can talk about like the timeline there. I know there's a lot of questions, especially I've got young ones here, juniors. If you haven't tested yet, now is the time to start thinking about that. 10th graders, it's time to start setting that up. So Spencer's asking where the Q&A is. In that chat where you're typing that in, there should be a little gray button that has a little chat bubble. There should be a little arrow down there that you can click and it should pop up an option for Q&A. If you don't see that, you can just go ahead and type, question in all caps, colon, and then whatever question you have. But you guys are welcome to chat with one another. A lot of you probably already know something about the PSAT, so that will be very helpful. And I'm sure we're gonna get people coming in. Spencer, Bazinga is right, although not a question. Thank you for for answering that you found it. Love it. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we get to the topic at hand, though, I do want to share my screen and share a little bit about who I am and why I might be qualified to share this information with you, and then we will dive into the presentation. So let's see here. Share. All righty. So hopefully that is a-okay. Lindsay, I just switched it over. So if you can't see it right now, someone could give me just a little shout out that they're seeing the Higher Scores Test Prep website, just and my picture with very different haircut. If you could just type in, yeah, we see it into the chat, that would be helpful. But basically, my name is Lauren Gaggioli. I am the founder of Higher Scores Test Prep. I'm also the host of the College Checklist podcast. And perfect, you guys, thank you for letting me know that you're seeing it. So my experience with testing kind of began young, obviously, with all of you. I went through high school and tested in high school and, took both the SAT and the ACT back when the SAT was a 1600 exam, which, hey, we're back. It's a 1600 exam again. But in the interim, it's been a 2400 exam. And I was a full AP and IB student, if you're familiar with the International Baccalaureate program. So I went full nerd in high school is basically what I'm saying. And I always kind of liked testing. I know, don't throw up. It was something that I felt kind of came easy to me. And I really didn't mind waking up on a Saturday morning and going and taking the test. So my dad nicknamed me the number 2 pencil nerd. And I still go and take these exams as an adult. So for instance, I just took the SAT this weekend. I took the ACT for the last time last December. I'll be going in and taking it again a little bit later this year. So I like to stay on top of all of these exams to make sure that the information I'm sharing in my courses is the perfect fit for what and really shares what you're going to see on test day. So while I am not allowed to take a PSAT because that's administered by the schools, I am able to see the full SAT, which gives me insight into what you might expect to see on the SAT. So as I mentioned, I also have the podcast that is the College Checklist. We talk about all things college admissions. We're available on iTunes, Google Play, and it's a free resource to help you with your college admissions process. So if you guys have questions, I likely have an episode that answers it. If you maybe have questions and you can't find an episode, please let me know. I am happy to create episodes just for you. So if they have questions about this college admissions thing, let me know. Alrighty. So with that, we are going to get to, oh, look at all of you in here. We're going to dive in to the PSAT. So I'm going to go ahead and copy the link because I have a feeling it got buried in the chat, which means I need to pop back over here. Hang on. Here's the worksheet. For those of you who are joining us just now, welcome. As you can see, everybody was sharing what state and grade they are from. So go ahead and I typed that back in. If you scroll to the very top or rather bottom of the chat, however it's flowing, you're welcome to do that. It should be the very first post in the chat. So rest assured, as you get the replay, this will be linked up again. And of course, I'm sharing the screen as well. So you can just follow along here. This is also really a handy thing to maybe print out as you're, if you want to follow along and take notes on the page, you can do that as well. So, Alex, yes, there will be a replay available. Great question. So I will be sending that out in the next day, basically putting a page with the embedded video and all the resources on the website. At the end, I'm going to give you a little review. So like a 5-day study plan so that, between now and the 19th, when you take that PSAT, you'll be able to prepare. So it's going to be a little bit of like a continued prep plan. But this in and of itself should be enough to help you feel calm and comfortable and know what to expect. But the ability for you guys to kind of take that and put it into practice, that's where it really like the rubber hits the road. So you gotta get ready in a way that is going to prepare you for the timing and all that on test day 2. So I would recommend using that continued plan at the end. So just know there might be homework. Okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. And the first thing I think is really important to lay out is what the heck the PSAT program is. Because a lot of students go, oh, it's a test. It's practice test. Great. And that's kind of all they know. And really the problem with that is that for some students, it's more than a practice test. For some students, and that is for your juniors, it may be a way for you to get some money for college, get some recognition. So if you're a really strong tester, this can actually be a lot more than that. But unfortunately, a lot of families and a lot of students don't realize that. So what is the PSAT NMSQT? That is the preliminary SAT and the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. So it matters because there are recognition opportunities and there are potential scholarship awards for really high scoring students who also fulfill other requirements. So it counts only in October of your junior year. So if you're here early, if you're a sophomore, or oh my gosh, if you're a freshman and you're here super early, that's amazing. But just rest assured that it is a true practice test for you. No college will see this information. But if you're a junior who generally tests really well, then you should maybe take this a little more seriously because there's a potential to be recognized. Okay, so the recognition opportunities come in sort of 3 different flavors. You can be commended, you can become a semifinalist, or you can become a finalist. All right. So if you're named a semifinalist, you go through a few extra steps and you become a finalist. Commended is just thanks for playing. You did great. Here's a little feather in your cap that, oh, by the way, you can put on your high school resumes as you apply to college. So it looks really good. So I'll give you guys the breakdown of the numbers there in just a second. But a lot of students, this is kind of a weird thing. We're a year out from the PSAT changing. So if you took the PSAT last year, you saw what you will see on this year's test. If you took it 2 years ago, it was dramatically different. So it's important to know that because sometimes students skip a year, and then if you did, you might come back and be completely blindsided. But regardless, so many students underestimate this test and don't know that it has any value, that it really opens the door for some prepared students to kind of end up scoring higher by virtue of the way the curve works, and actually potentially be recognized. So that's pretty awesome. Um, if you do well enough to qualify for semifinalist status on the PSAT, you will need to verify your score. And actually, I'm going to remove this bullet because that's not true anymore. You will, oh, can I not? I'm on edit. Come on. You are going to need to use the new SAT. Forget this bit, the verifier score, the 2400, because now we are only on the 1600. You will need to verify your score if you are named a semifinalist on this PSAT and you want to progress beyond. So how are you named a semifinalist or commended, or how do they decide that? Well, it's all based on your score. And what they use is what's called the selection index score. But basically, you can use the total score to sort of approximate. And basically, even though it's a national competition, the qualifying scores are calculated on a state by state basis. And they change slightly every year. So it's really hard for me to say, hey, answer this many questions right, and you will be named commended or semifinalist. And the other thing that I really like to point out at this point is that while I, of course, want you to do your best work on this test, of course, that is absolutely the goal. The numbers here are pretty steep. 1.6 million students take this test. And of the 1.6 million, about 50,000 are named in the commended or semifinalist category. So if memory serves, it's about 35,000 that are commended. So that's the thanks for playing, you did great, here's the little feather in your cap. And about 15,000 will be moved into the semifinalist category, from which it's whittled down to, I want to say, 7,500 students. So cuts about in half from semifinalist to finalist out of 1.6 million. I don't say this to discourage you. I say this to keep it in perspective, because sometimes I get calls from parents who say, how long do we need to prepare for the PSAT? Will a year be enough? And I say, whoa, like if you're going to put your eggs in one basket, put it in the SAT or ACT basket. This is a fantastic opportunity for you to do your very best work, but we've got to keep it in balance with what you can get out of it. So if you are coming at this and you're saying, you know what, I'm just going to give it my level best so I have a really good baseline so I can figure out a good testing timeline and strategy beyond this, that's awesome. If you're coming at this saying, I am going to qualify, that's great too. But I just want to make sure that you're putting in, the right amount of energy, because your GPA is incredibly important as you apply to college. You can't be studying for the PSAT to the detriment of these other things. So keep it all in perspective. Your PSAT does not get you into college, nor does an SAT or ACT score alone. So, we got to keep everything in balance and, keep juggling and keep all the balls in the air. So please, please keep that in mind as we start talking about the other things, because as with anything that has to do with testing, it can get really stressful, really overwhelming very quickly. So my goal is always to eliminate stress and help you do your best. So however I can help you in that capacity, that is what I'm here to do. So I think putting the facts before you, so that you can make good choices is the way to start. So that's why we start here. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the PSAT exam and kind of talk about what's on it. So the PSAT generally tests your verbal skills, which is kind of a smushing together of your reading and your writing section, and your math skills, which is tested in 2 sections. So you can see here this, and I call it the new PSAT again, just to sort of help create a distinction for those of you who maybe have seen that old one. I just want to make sure it's never unclear that this is not that 2400 iteration. So the PSAT is organized in 4 sections. And if you've seen the new SAT, this probably looks awfully familiar. Just went through this last weekend. It was not fun. So the first section is the reading test. We'll talk more about the breakdown in a minute. The second is the writing and language. So language doesn't mean like foreign language. It's just fluency in writing in English, to be very clear. The section 3 is a math test with no calculator, which always throws some students for a loop. And section 4 is a math test with a calculator. Okay, so for the verbal and the math sections, so sort of that smooshing together of the reading and the writing and the smooshing together of the 2 math sections, you're given a scaled score between 160 and 760. Okay, so that is sort of the 2 main sections that they're pulling apart. If you're familiar with SAT scoring, you can see they just subtracted 40 off of the normal 200 to 800. Don't ask me why. I think they make this way too confusing and they could really just streamline this, but they don't because they're College Board. So with that said, you can see that this ends up having a ripple effect. And now your total score, instead of falling between 400 and 1600 like it does on the full length SAT, now it falls between 320 and a 1520. Well, I will say, as you try to maybe figure out where you fall along your state, that what you're going to find online are the state statistics. I'm sorry, you can probably hear my cat chiming in here. So, I'm seeing a request for the worksheet once more. Here, I can see your guys' questions, but I'm like on a mission here to like get you guys the information. So I'm going to put the worksheet again. And then we'll get back to it. Yeah, sorry. I can see your guys' questions, but look at all of you guys already on it. I love it. Oh, thank you. And Natalie, yes, you're right. If people have questions that they're looking to not chat about publicly, I'm going to give you a resource. We can either chat on the phone or you can email me. I will have you know my inbox is a terrifying place right now. So I will get back to you. I respond to every email, but it might be more than just like a day. So just so you're aware. Okay. I think I've caught up on comments. Awesome. Yeah, so William, please do connect with me directly if you're uncomfortable, but I won't get to it as a part of today's session, just so you're clear. Alrighty, so as I was saying, the selection index is a slightly different number, but I think it's really hard to calculate. So if you are curious about your state's kind of the total score, if you just search PSAT scores for national merit state by state, that will come up with a list. I know there are a few out there. Just keep in mind they're all approximations. So I would use the total scores just to give you a sense of what you're looking for in order to qualify, if that is something you're looking to do. If it's not, just get in there and do your best work and don't worry about it. If this is a true practice test for you, you're a sophomore or a freshman or a junior who's just aiming to get a kind of a good sense of where you're starting, then that's a great place to go. All right. So something that I hit every single time, because now the internet is confusing, because if you search PSAT, you might be getting information on the old PSAT and you might be getting information on the one you're seeing, the new SAT. There is no guessing penalty. That is a huge shift for College Board. In fact, they're still split because some of their tests, like the subject tests, still have a guessing penalty. So it's very hard to figure out strategy, but rest assured there is no guessing penalty. The other thing to take note of is that not only are you going to have these numbers on your score sheet, you're going to have lots of other ones, because College Board, which is the creator of the PSAT, is really placing heavy emphasis on cross-disciplinary measures. So they're putting things like science graphs in the middle of your reading section, and you have to determine certain facts based off of that. And you will have examples of this for sure. So you can definitely go into some of the resources that I give you later if you want to see an example of that. But just to sort of put it in perspective, and I'm probably going to have maybe a little bit of a backlash here as I say this, David Coleman, the whole revamp of the SAT and the PSAT happened under David Coleman. And David Coleman is the architect of Common Core. Now, don't don't worry about that. If you are not in Common Core curriculum, you still can do this test. If you hate Common Core curriculum and are learning it, you can still do this test. I was not educated in it, and I can still take an SAT just fine. But just so you understand, like that, if you are in Common Core, you'll realize, oh, the cross-disciplinary stuff. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. That seems kind of familiar. So if that I don't say that to scare anybody or dissuade you from taking this test. I know that it's definitely an issue today, but just so you're aware of kind of where the pedagogy is coming from, kind of how they're thinking about educating students, that is going to inform how you look at this test. So just so you're aware, cross-disciplinary measures are a part of this, and you're going to get extra bonus numbers floating around about that. But the ones that really matter are those verbal and math sections that get added together to your total score. Alrighty. So moving on, tell us how you really feel, Spencer. Yes, it's awful. I honestly, I have friends who are so pro Common Core curriculum, and I have friends who are so anti. And I'm not in a school district, so it's not applicable to me. All I'm doing is sitting back and watching the conversations and going, "Wow, there's a lot of opinions floating around about this." So I know at some point I'm going to have to dive into it, so I have the right language to talk with some of my students about things. But now is not the time. Now I've still got some nice balance and still some old school learning, which is easier for me. I don't know necessarily if it's better for my students. We'll see. Time will tell. Alrighty. So going into point number 3 here, what can you expect on the PSAT reading test? So this is always section 1. These orders will always be the same. And what you can expect is an hour-long test with 47 questions. And there are 5 passages in the practice test. So I put the little asterisks here because all I have to go on is what I've seen in practice exams. And what I can tell you is that while the actual distribution of questions likely won't change, but you will you may see a slight shift in how things are delivered. So I think the 60 minutes, 47 question ratio, absolutely probably going to hold. Not absolutely probably, absolutely will hold. That's what I've seen on the SATs. I think that's pretty standard, and I don't think they'll be shifting that. What they do with the passages and the distribution of questions, that remains to be seen. It might shift a little bit. So just be aware that while 9 to 10 questions per passage is kind of standard, that gives you a 12-minute per passage approach. Then, if it shifts slightly, hopefully it won't. I don't think it'll be too dramatically. You're just aware of sort of what your pacing should look like. So keep in mind that 12 minutes per passage, and that's if you want to finish. And we'll talk about when you might not want to finish in a little bit. But you should expect single and dual reading passages. To date, I've only seen one dual reading passage, meaning 2 shorter passages. You have questions on the first one, you have questions on the second one, and then you have questions that are about the 2 and, points where they agree, or maybe the tone of one and the tone of the other, how they compare and contrast. Little bit more involved. Having strategy there can be really helpful. But by and large, what I've seen is that 4 of the passages are single passages, and you get 1 of those dual reading passages as a part of the mix. It's going to test your reading comprehension, your ability to support your answers, which is an intriguing little kind of call out kind of question that's brand new, understanding vocabulary in context, and of course the ability to interpret relevant data as it's presented in charts and graphs, which again, cross-disciplinary measures, right? So as you're looking through here, I think that ability to support your answers in a standardized test is kind of a critical component that you might not have been called to do yet. So let me explain what I mean by that. You will have a passage, and you will be reading through, and they'll ask you a question about, something in lines 13 to 25. Once you answer that question, they will then say, what lines supported you answering B in the previous question? And essentially what you have to do is go through and call out the quotation, the lines, they'll give you line references that supported the answer you gave in the previous questions. So these are kind of double or nothing questions. And the way you work around them is by always knowing why you're answering what you're answering. Then this becomes really easy. You get two answers really quick and off you go. If you don't know why you're picking the answer for the first one, you have to sift through the four answers in the second one and go back and forth between the passage and the quotations that they gave you and go, does this match? Does this work? I don't know. Does this match? Does this work? I don't know. Does this match? Does this work? I don't know. It's laborious. So what I always encourage students to do is, number one, answer in their own words. As you're reading through a passage, you come to a question. Before you look at the answer choices, A through D, know what you're looking for. Don't look to them to give you the answer. It feels like the right answer is there, therefore I should just be able to find it. They are so good at writing wrong answers that you might be tempted to pick it. So instead of falling victim to what they say, you should be rather looking to the passage saying, I think the answer is roughly this because of this fact here. And then these dual answer choices become really easy to do. Okay. So take your time with that. And again, taking time, we'll talk about how that figures into your pacing and whatnot. But it's always better to do thorough work than it is to go more quickly. So suffice it to say, you'll be tired of me saying that by the end. Alrighty. I see a couple of questions popping up, so let me go ahead and answer them because I think some of the questions are about this. So Storm says, what if the evidence you use to get to the correct answer is wrong? I have trouble with that. Okay, so Storm, I'm wondering if, So I'm curious to know what you mean by that. Are you getting the right answer from the wrong information? Because that doesn't make sense to me. So if you can sort of speak to what you mean by that, like, are you finding the right answer using the wrong evidence? And if so, what I would say is that maybe you're sort of in the right range, but you should read a little bit more. You should open up the doors a bit, so that you're looking not just at one word, but you're looking at two lines. That might give you a little more flexibility, because the other thing is it's really hard to determine what College Board is using sometimes, because sometimes evidence is presented, over a couple of lines. They're developing an argument across a wider conversation. So that can be the case. So Jordan's asking, what is an average or good score to get? And I have a question from Ozzy about his starting score. So the average on this test is, so the average for the SAT tends to be about the 1,000 mark. But remember, this is all scooched down a little bit. So if you're in the like 950 range, you're right at about the 50th percentile. And so I think that's a good score. It's a solid score. You're kind of right smack in the middle. And especially I'm seeing here that you're in 10th grade, so you might not have some of the math you need. But in order to qualify, the scores are generally like 1380 plus. So that might be something that you keep your eye on towards this year as you take a new test, and then of course next year as you are in 11th grade and moving towards that. So average scores are more in the 1,000 range, 950 to 1,000 roughly here. And then qualification scores are usually like that 1,400 mark plus, 1,380, 1,400, depending on your state. It's going to be higher or lower. So I'm getting a lot of questions about scores, so we'll get to those at the end. I see Spencer kind of elaborated on what Storm was originally saying, for me, the issue is getting the right answer, but finding it through text they don't offer or through common sense. So I would take a moment, Spencer, to really kind of, as you look at practice questions and as you miss them, see how close you are. See, if you're one line away, then again, I think it goes to what I said to Storm about like just expanding your swath a little bit so that it includes a little bit more, because you might be approximating it, but again, it might not be what they're picking. In terms of common sense, that's kind of a tougher one. know a lot of students who can do really well, but just going by like, well, I sort of got the sense that this is the answer. But I feel like really diving in and going further with that, really diving in and being more specific and forcing yourself to be more specific. It's harder. Your brain will hurt more, but it's very important that you start to pinpoint that for yourself. And every student is different, so I can't give a blanket answer there. But I think looking at the patterns of your past work is the place to start. Okay, so moving on from reading, let's dive into the writing and language test. And if you guys have more questions about that, I'm happy to answer them. But for the sake of everybody watching who doesn't have this issue, we're gonna press on here. So into the writing and language test, which is section 2, you can see it's significantly shorter, half the time roughly, but it's 44 questions. So half the time, 3 fewer questions. And ironically, I don't find that a lot of students struggle with this timing as much because there's something about the flow of this passage that is much more easy going. Like there's less to interpret. There is less to kind of work through here. It's very much, these are the rules. Does this follow the rules? Yes or no? And if no, then which one does? So it's a little more cut and dry than a passage where you're trying to like deduce what the author is saying or compare passages, things like that. So this is going to be, there are 4 passages. So they kind of group a bunch of questions around a passage on a particular topic and they flow through. It's 8 minutes per passage, roughly, with 11 questions each. Again, that's going to put you slightly over the 35 minutes. So think 7.5 minutes. That'll get you in. This is really focusing on your punctuation and grammar rules, your understanding of paragraph structure and flow, which is sometimes called rhetorical skills. So if you've taken the ACT, this is really similar to the English section, like almost to a T, with the exception of the final comment here, which is that you have the ability, it tests your ability to interpret relevant data presented in charts and graphs. So again, those cross-disciplinary measures coming in here as well. The biggest thing here is knowing the hard and fast rules about punctuation and grammar so that those go more quickly, so that those reading-ish style questions that are a little more like, should this sentence be in here? Yes or no, and why? That you have a little more time to deal with those because those are less cut and dry. So really a revamp and going back and reviewing your punctuation and grammar can be very, very helpful. Michelle, the replay I will be emailing out. So absolutely, I will be getting that out to you guys. And Grace, I'm going to give you a link at the end of this. And then Jamie asked, how can your ACT score cue you in on how you'll do in the PSAT? Use the percentiles. So if you got a 75th percentile score on the ACT, you'll likely get into the 75th percentile on the PSAT as well. And you can find those percentiles if you just search. Again, everything's kind of approximations because as I understand it, College Board is about 2 years behind. So they just released their data this fall, but it's their data from the final release of the old SAT. So it's not really helpful for students who are trying to find their way here. But you can also use sort of the SAT. I think there's probably more data on the SAT percentiles versus as compared to scores. And actually, College Board may have a concordance table that can help you as well. So if you get in there and take a look, then you can go ahead and see what's available on the College Board site. I'm seeing a lot of questions coming across here. So let me go ahead. I'm going to push pause before we get into math, and I'm going to see if I think I see some stuff coming across about reading and writing. So 1 second. All right. So address that. I addressed that. Yes, there will be a replay. I'm going to just go ahead and get some of these out of here so I can see what's going on. Okay, so we're talking about the PSAT. So there is no essay. So Storm, if you would like to talk about the essay, we can talk about that, definitely. But at the end, because it's not on this test. So yeah, we will. Yeah, Sam, there is no spelling. because there is no essay. Everything on this test is a multiple choice. All right. So we'll definitely, I can address the essay at the end. All right. And then Jordan asked a question, will there be any questions where you have to conclude what the author's overall point of the story is? Yes. So it's not always stories, just to be clear. It's not always narrative style. There's often just articles on various topics. So the main point of the passage, the main conclusions drawn from it, the through lines, things like that, absolutely going to be present. So what I always say for the reading test, so we're kind of going back to the reading test here. What I always say for the reading test is you sort of have two main types of questions. You have the detail questions. So can you pull the facts out and interpret them as they fit into the story as a whole, or the passage as a whole, rather? And then you have more main idea umbrella questions. So there's detail and there's more broad questions. So yeah, you'll see both, and you have examples that are coming up. So examples that you can explore on your own that are coming up. So that is absolutely something that we can explore. Alrighty, William, I'm putting your question into the Q&A and I will address it at the end because it is time to move on to math, okay? So this is the area where younger students need to be really gentle with themselves. If you're a ninth grader, if you're a 10th grader, please don't think that you're supposed to be able to answer every single question. With the verbal sections, if you know punctuation and grammar, and if you can read, then, essentially you're queued up and ready heading into high school to take this test. Could you hone your skills more? Absolutely. Could you read more complex texts and develop your skills further? Absolutely. But generally speaking, those core kinds of needs to do the work, you have them. With math, it grows, right? Your knowledge base is going to grow, and you continue to learn a lot of new math in high school. So please know that you shouldn't be, it's hard. I know it's easy for me to say, but try not to stress out. If you haven't seen, if you're not in Algebra 2 or into pre-cal, there are concepts you don't know. And frankly, for some juniors, it's important to remember that. Not everybody is through everything by the time they see this test. So deep breaths, as we head through here, you do what you can. You focus on what you can do, and you try to do the very best work you can there. Okay? So as we sort of talk about these sections, remember the score for the math section is done in tandem. So it sort of smooshes all of the data from these two bits together, and your raw score is going to, get you your score between the 160 and the 5, and the, what is it? I just blanked. 160 and 760. There we go. So the first math section you're going to see, you don't get to use a calculator. It's 25 minutes, 17 questions. There's 13 multiple choice, and then the only kind of free response on this test, which is what's called a grid-in question. And essentially what that means is that instead of, A, B, C, or D, what you are going to do is answer the question, come up with the number, which you should always do anyway, even when there is A, B, C, or D. But instead of picking one bubble, what you do is you enter that information in. So for instance, if I got 15 sevenths as an answer, I would write in 1, 5, the little divisor bar, and 7. And then underneath, kind of like when you bubble in like your name on the the sheet at the very beginning, and like you put in your test code and all of that, and it's the box at the top where you write it in by hand, but then you fill in the corresponding bubbles. So below you will have a decimal point, a dash, a divisor bar. You will have numbers 0 through 9. And so you fill in. So I'd bubble in 1 on the first box, I'd bubble in 5 on the second, then I do the divisor bar, and then I do 7 on the final one. So I end up basically putting in my free response answer, but essentially the approach is the same. The questions are very similar. It's not like it's a completely different kind of question. So it's a very it's disjointing for some students to have to do it and have to kind of change their approach, but it's not for all students. And I think if you keep in mind that it really is the same approach as to how you approach any math question, you should answer it first before looking to those bubbles. Then I think you'll be okay with those, and they are in both sections. Now, the thing that's important to note is sort of the range of the math that's needed here. Yes, there's going to be Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. There's also going to be arithmetic, which is really frustrating when you're looking at a concept you learned however many moons ago and you're going, and now I'm expected to remember this. Shoot, it's been a long time since I worked with mean, median, and mode. You're also going to be responsible for geometry. They will include some of the formulas and such in the documentation, so you will have those. Most of the time, as students don't have that in their brain, they're not as comfortable using it. So I encourage you to memorize as much of those really basic formulas: area of a circle, area of a rectangle, things like that. I would just have those memorized so you're comfortable with them, and then use the resource just as needed, just in case, or to verify that you're on the right track. There are also some very basic statistics, which frankly, I never took stats and I feel very comfortable answering the questions. So, they'll do like best fit lines on a graph. That's really, honestly, I think it's kind of as far as it goes. So there are things you can figure out if you've done statistical analysis in science. Sometimes you've experienced it there. So it's not like you have to have taken a stats class to do well. And then, of course, pre-cal is going to be a part of it too. This doesn't show up as strongly on the PSAT because the PSAT sort of keeps it more to those other main areas, just because they know, junior year, if you're going to take pre-cal, oftentimes you're taking it your junior year, so you're not through it a lot of it yet. So you might get a basic SOHCAHTOA question, which if you're a 10th grader or 9th grader, you might be going, qua. Totally fine if you don't know what it is, but just recognize that there will be some concepts on here that might be outside your grasp. Totally fine. Focus on the ones that are within your grasp and see how you do on those. That's going to be the place to focus your attentions. All right. There is definitely a heavy emphasis on word problems, interpreting word problems, writing out an algebraic equation, and solving it. And this is the case in both sections. So basically, these bottom two bullets are applying in both math sections, just being tested in slightly different ways. When you have that calculator, they make a big point to say, hey, you may have a calculator in hand, but you don't need a calculator to answer all these questions. And that's fine. You do what makes you most comfortable. Okay. So I will also note that a lot of the kind of workaround strategies, like substitution method, if you've ever used answers and like plugged them in to solve, they've figured out kind of how to make that a lot harder to do. So really, I used to give students the choice for the SAT and the PSAT. I'm having to say, hey, let's brush up on algebra, because ultimately it's going to make your life a lot easier in the long run, which I don't think is a bad thing, to have that algebraic knowledge, to have that lack of workaround, but just be aware that that is something that's kind of in the mix here. Okay. And then, of course, just the breakdown on 6 is different. Everything I just said is going to apply with the exception of the timing. Now it's 45 minutes, 31 questions, 27 multiple choice, 5 grid-ins. And so again, about a minute and a half a question there. All right, I'm going to quickly jump over and answer a few questions here. And then we're going to talk about some of the strategies that I like to employ to help students really do their best work on this test. So, Caroline, what do you do if you think a question in the reading could have multiple plausible answers in the reading section and you could back up both answers you think are right? You keep in mind that this is a standardized test and there can only be one correct answer. So you have to kind of flip into a much more critical mindset. And you also, especially really strong readers, you guys are going to use it could be this and it could be that, because that's kind of what you're asked to do in your English classes, right? You're assessing the different metaphors and you get to come up with what they mean. Well, as a part of this, you really need to zero in on the one thing that is as clearly stated in the passage as it possibly can be, or is just a teensy step outside. If it takes 2 steps to get to your right answer, well, it could be this if that. The if that is the thing that negates that answer as a possibility on a standardized test. So, really, if you are kind of like AP level student with English, especially, those students tend to have a hard time on this. You really have to kind of dial it back and really be as cut and dry with the text as you possibly can be. It's a tough thing to get used to, so do it in practice first. Make sure you're on the right track. Look for trends in your own work. And what I like to do is if I get it to a 50-50, so let's say you had 2 plausible answers, you look at the answer choice and one of each is sitting there and you're like, ugh, I made both of these and now they both kind of work. At that point, go back to the text and be really forceful with it. Be really critical. Oh yeah, IB English. I recognize my kind. I was an IBer too, and you're good at it, and it's great, and it has its place there. It doesn't have its place here. So you just have to turn on a little bit different muscle, more of that logic muscle as opposed to that creative muscle. So just aim to do that as much as possible. Curtis is asking if graphing calculators are allowed. Absolutely, but there are some kinds of calculators that are banned. So just go and search what kinds of calculators are allowed. They'll have a full list. Again, there are so many different calculators out there right now. Go and look at the list. Don't trust what somebody says. Go and make sure you verify it with College Board themselves. Alrighty, so Shannon says, my son is in the 9th grade and the PSAT is on Saturday. Okay. If possible, would it make sense to take the 11th grade version instead of 8 through 9? I would not. No. And I'm not even sure he'd be able to. And this is new with this new PSAT. So you're saying that, he definitely couldn't take, as far as I know, the NMSQT because that is now only being given in the junior year, in the 11th grade year. So take the version that's right for your student. What they may do is dial back some of the math to make it a little more age appropriate. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think ultimately it's going to give your student an edge because they're building their confidence. This is definitely a test that, again, I take a very kind of Zen approach to this. Like, I want every student to do their best. It doesn't mean you're going to get perfect scores. And not everybody's supposed to get perfect scores. It's a curved test, but I want students to do their best work every single time. And so I think taking the test that's appropriate for his grade level is the right thing to do for sure. If you really want to see how he'd do on a full-length SAT, you could give him a practice SAT. There are free versions online. But I would just warn you, I think that to me, I don't do that until students are late in their sophomore year, early in their junior year. It's too much. And if students are really focused on their academics and really dedicated to learning in school, that is going to be the thing that ends up allowing them to prepare well later. As I always tell people, I only need about 3 months to do the full treatment. So I would definitely, as long as I'm getting a student who's a strong reader and has kept up with their math work and is doing the best work they can in their classes, it doesn't take that long to transition them to understanding how this test work. And everybody only has so much gas in the tank to get them through test prep. This is not supposed to be a 4-year journey, not by any stretch. This is a get in, get your score, and get out. At least that's my perspective. Kaylee, you cannot have scratch paper. So you can write in your booklet, but they will not allow you extra paper. Okay. And then William asking me about the difficulty of ACT reading compared to PSAT reading. I got a really hard reading section on the full-length SAT this past weekend, like leaps and bounds ahead of what I saw last May. So I think for PSAT, they will keep it backed up from that, but I would not put it past them to give you something that's much more convoluted than what you're used to seeing on the ACT. ACT is pretty cut and dry. You get usually pretty modern narrative passages. That is not necessarily the case. There's a lot of stuff that's not contemporary. So be prepared with that, and just be prepared for pretty complex language. And again, the examples, you'll be able to see those in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk now about kind of the core of this, which is the strategies. All right. So understanding what you're going to be saying is important. Absolutely. And knowing sort of what's coming and how much time you have for various activities, I think that is really helpful, just so that you feel like you sort of know what world you're stepping into. But understanding how to approach it is sometimes counterintuitive. The thing that you're supposed to do might not feel great, and that goes to my very first tip here, which, if anybody here has worked with me, they're probably rolling their eyes right now. So the cornerstone of everything that I teach is that accuracy is greater than speed. All right. That you might read that and go, wait, what? But the fact of the matter is that in a 15-minute section, if you take your time, answer 9 questions right, and leave 6 blank. Now, technically, you won't ever leave anything blank, but roll with me on this for a second. Or B, answer 15 and miss 8 of them. Obviously, the person who left 6 blank ends up ahead in the count, right? And really, what matters more than getting the questions right? Nothing, because if you cross the finish line, but you are dumping points as you go, then it doesn't matter that you cross the finish line. It might feel good, but it's not actually getting you where you want to go. And I have a lot of students who struggle with this, because in your head, you might look at A and B and go, yeah, okay, A makes more sense, obviously. But in the moment, when there's 5 minutes left and you have 10 questions on the page, the right play might be going, I'm going to get 3 more points and I'm going to make sure I get them. As opposed to, I'm going to answer all of these sort of halfway and I'm going to bounce around and my head is going to get all just fuzzy because I'm so stressed out about the time. So the pacing on the PSAT is fairly generous, especially if you've taken an ACT. This will feel like you have plenty of time, but it's still not like you've got gobs to roll around in. I sort of paid attention to the pacing in the room, and the real SAT is very similarly paced. I kind of paid attention to what pencils were still flying at the ends of sections, and there were a lot of students who were still working right up to the buzzer. And that's okay, right? But if our focus is on finishing, then we're worried about the wrong thing. Time is a constraint of the test maker, right? Time is something they put on us. So it is our choice to say, no thanks. I'm going to do the best work I can possibly do. Now, you need to plan well. You need to leave enough buffer at the end so that you can fill in every bubble. But filling in every bubble doesn't mean you answered every question. It just means you filled in every bubble. So yes, Mary Jo, you do not get docked points for guessing. So that's why you fill in every bubble, which is leave no bubbles blank, point number 2. So it seems like a contradiction. I just said don't worry about finishing, and now I'm saying fill in every bubble. Yeah, but the thing is, if you're investing time in a question, you should be getting a point out, or you should be ditching it really fast if you realize, hey, I don't know this math concept. Then you should move on. This is again that balance, but always keep about a 2-minute bank of time, so that 2 minutes before time is called is your actual time called for you personally, so that you can go through in calm and just make sure that there is no Swiss cheese. Your Scantron doesn't have any holes in it. You are filling in every bubble, and you want to get a couple extra points, use the exact same letter for all of those air quotes here, blanks. So anything you are not approaching gets the exact same letter. That increases your odds of guessing right. If you're moving around and the right answers are moving around, you may never hit one another. But if you stand still and the right answers are moving around, at some point they'll hit you. So use the same letter to fill in all of the bubbles. And that might mean that the last 15 questions are all B. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. As long as everything before that was your very best effort and was accurate work to the best of your ability that day. By really focusing on accuracy over speed, you reclaim the test as your own. You reclaim the ability to focus on what's most important. So I was talking with a student today who took the ACT, and there was a section she feels like she's just been underperforming in. And I said, what I like to do at the beginning of a section so that I reclaim the time and sort of test on my own terms, they say, all right, ready, set, go. And I sit there for 5 seconds just to be cheeky. And I go, you know what? I'm not going yet. It's not time for me. I take a deep breath and I stretch my neck. And then I go 5 seconds later. It's stupid. It's a really little thing, but it gives me the power. And I think that that's important. I think a lot of us feel like we're at the mercy of these tests sometimes. And just having that mindset shift on test day can be what we need to go 5 seconds. Yeah, this is mine. And we step into it and we kind of step on stage on our own terms. All righty. So yeah, Sam and Ozzy are saying C is their go-to letter. Absolutely. And you know what? You could change it section to section, and maybe in English it's one, or not English, writing it's one, and math it's another. The thing to keep in mind is that you cannot do that really on the grid-in for the math. So what I always do is I'll put 0 or 1. It's rarely the right answer, but just so that there's something in there, just in case, right? I mean, it'd really stink if I didn't do it and it actually was 0 or 1. So just keep in mind there's that slight difference with the math section here that is not a consideration on the ACT when I teach this. So it's a little different, but that's okay. All right. Gentlemen, I'm looking at you because most of you, and look, I've had ladies who do this too. So please know that I'm not just picking on you. It's an equal opportunity pick on. You guys, you have to write on your stinking test. So I just got the question about whether or not you get scratch paper, and you don't, but you can write anywhere you want in the actual test booklet. It's your test booklet. So you need to be writing on it. You need to be crossing answers out and circling the ones you think are right. And if you're unsure about a number, pick which one you think is right in the moment, but circle it so you can easily go back to it if you have a little extra time at the end. I'm loving the comments. C for correct, B for best, A for absolutely correct. Oh, Storm, yeah. What about D? D for done. D for Duncan. Duncan, it's for your own name. You should always pick D. So anyway, which one you pick doesn't matter, by the way, on that letter of the day note, but you guys are cracking me up. Alrighty. So the writing on your test, here's the thing. You should be doing it all the way through. Think of it as your backup of your computer, right? If something happens and you realize you misgridded and you're not exactly sure where the error happened, usually it's pretty easy to figure out, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's really weird and you go, how did I do that? Because you were so focused on the test. It's really important to have the correct answer circled in your test booklet so that you can go back to it. Heaven forbid there's a huge issue. You can erase in en masse and go back and carefully bubble in. The other thing that's really helpful is that underlining things in passages and circling things that you think are important, starring dates, doing little things like that, keeping your pencil on the page, even in the verbal sections, is helpful to keeping you engaged with what's on the page. There's something kinetic that happens when you put your pencil to paper and start writing. Even if it's kind of stray marks, sometimes I'll look at what I underlined and I'll go, I don't know why I did that. Maybe it was that I was losing focus and I needed to really get back into it. And so I'd underline it and then my eye has something to track with. The more you do at the beginning of the test, the more energy you'll have at the end of the test because less is stored in your mind. It's energy used. If you put if you're using your memory when it's an open book test, you need that energy maybe for that final push in the math. So really write all over the test. use it to eliminate answers, use that to eliminate bubbling errors. One thing that's really nice, if you end up with a little bank of time at the end, you just happen to, you did your best and most accurate work and off you went. Sometimes what happens on the other side is that you go, okay, I've got 2 minutes. Let me make sure I didn't bubble wrong. And I went in and I actually found an error this last test. So I found where, the answer was supposed to be, I don't know what it was exactly, but it was supposed to be C and it was actually B. And I had just, in my haste, picked the wrong bubble as I went over to my Scantron. I was able to catch that. That's a point back on my plate. So even if it's 1 point, it's absolutely worth it to be writing all over your test. So I think I've made the case here. Everybody write on your test. Kaylee, I've never heard that someone was not supposed to write on their test booklet. I don't think that's correct because they're not supposed to reuse these test booklets. So I would go in and talk to a counselor ASAP. Get in there, ask questions because that seems completely counter to anything I've ever heard. And I don't know how they could expect you to do a whole test in your head. That's ludicrous. And absolutely the advantage of having a paper and pencil test is that you can write on it. So yeah, I would go back and ask, Kaylee, what state are you in? Just out of curiosity, because I work with students across the country and I'm always curious to know so I can help them. So if you could just type in, if you don't mind, just what state you're in, that'll be helpful for me. And I can see if I can maybe follow up for you with the standards of practice, because what might be happening is your counselors are advising you incorrectly. So that's important. Missouri. Okay, so Sam's saying the same thing. All right, so you guys, all of you, just verify with your school. See, the thing that's tough about the PSAT is it's administered through your schools, not through College Board or ACT proper. So, but they're supposed to follow the mandates of College Board. So, yeah, that's really important. And if they don't, then I would ask if you get scratch paper, because then that might be the way they compensate. In which case, I would keep a running log of your answers on the side. Okay, William says they can write in their booklets. So bizarre. This is the problem with having it not centralized, and it's more confusing for students, frankly. So cool. Okay, we'll get to the bottom of this. All right, and I will do a little research on my own as well. And when I send out the replay, I'll see if I can include a little information on that. But I'm on it, guys. I'm on it. I've got connections. I'll find people who can help us. Cool. Okay, write on your test. Number 4, eat, drink, and move. So this is the other thing that I'm always surprised by. How many students don't eat breakfast or don't drink enough water? I mean, my goodness, your brain, this is like running a mental marathon. You absolutely have to fuel your body. So please, please, please make sure that you are doing so well. So please make sure you're having a healthy breakfast too. Nothing with too much sugar that's going to make you spike and crash. Make sure that you bring a snack to kind of give you staying power. And also during your breaks, get up and move. Oh my gosh, it's so important that you get your blood flowing. Your brain needs it. You need the oxygen to get your brain working. So please take this point seriously. I know it seems kind of silly, but really when I work with students and they take a practice test, and then they come back and like we were expecting them to track a little higher. And I go, okay, the first question I always ask, and usually the answer is no, is did you have breakfast? Did you eat? And oftentimes they go, oh, was I supposed to do that? Like, oh my gosh, you sat there for 4 hours and didn't fuel yourself. Of course you need to. So get up, move around, find a walking buddy, even if you don't have to, walk to the bathroom and back. They're kind of against loitering. So don't just like walk outside the room and chill, but make sure you're pacing and getting yourself going while, of course, stuffing your face, which is always fun, right? It's always nice to have an excuse to do that. So make sure you eat, drink, and move. And then lastly, again, all my students are going to be rolling their eyes. Accuracy is greater than speed. Make sure you keep that in the forefront of your mind because it is so important. It is so, so critical that you remember that as you go. So it's not going to feel good. But when you feel tempted to just move faster because you got to get through it, force yourself to go back and really make sure the work you're doing is solid. Okay? Spencer, you should be allowed to eat sometimes not in the room. Sometimes you have to step outside the room, but you should be given 2 breaks. If they're doing it exactly the same as the SAT, you get a 10-minute break after section 1, you get a 5-minute break after section 3, and you should be able to step outside and eat or drink. So yeah, 5-minute breaks. I can tell you my proctor this last week allowed me to step outside. And part of this, sometimes there is a discrepancy between what the between what College Board expects and what proctors do. So I would go in and verify this information as you get the information about whether or not you can write in your tests. You should be able to write in your test. I'm kind of floored by that. I've never heard that. So you should be able to eat and drink as long as you step outside. It shouldn't be a problem. Some schools, they're very picky about what's happening inside their classrooms. Alrighty. Okay, so your 5-day study plan is pretty straightforward. And you don't have to do all of this. You might pick certain bits to take and run with. All right. So ideally, these are kind of the guidelines that you'd print this stuff out and have it organized ahead of time. You're gearing up and ready to go. You have schedule about an hour and a half, 2 hours each day to complete the assignments. Use the strategies as a part of your practice. Really focus on taking your time, working accurately. And then this point right here, really, really important. You've got to take time to review your wrong answers. I have so many students who will just forge ahead and continue to do thousands and thousands of practice questions. I mean, literally, sometimes they've got 40 books and you're going, oh my gosh, do less. Do it better. Really taking time to look back at the patterns and see where the content is that you're missing. Is it that 1 comma rule? You're never going to know if it's that 1 comma rule unless you go back and look. So you have to use your past work as the template for you to do something different in the future. Okay. And wrong answers tend to come in 4 different flavors. So you have the not attempted or skipped because they look too challenging, right? You didn't recognize the concept. You went, my gosh, I haven't learned that. I'm pretty sure that's not something I know. And you go, okay, I'm not going to waste my time there. I'm going to move on. Wrong, even though you tried and knew it was too challenging. There's also silly mistakes. Those are kind of the sneaky dangerous ones because if there are enough of them, they can really start to pull your score down. And then, of course, slight misunderstandings that have been clarified so you can do them right next time. So 3 and 4 are your best opportunity for growth on a really shortened time frame. So really focus on silly mistakes and slight misunderstandings. Learning brand new concepts right now isn't going to be very beneficial and it's probably just going to stress you out. So let's really kind of dial it back and really focus on what you can control and what you can brush up from your arsenal of knowledge that you already have and use that to move forward. Okay? So here are the 3 days. The first 2 days come from a full-length SAT. So know that some of the math here is going to be a little too hard. I did pull out questions that I thought would be most likely to be on a PSAT. So notice that you're not answering every question, but do give yourself, a little practice there. But this is all coming from a full-length practice test. If you have the blue book, this is the first practice test in that book. If you don't have the blue book, then this is the first practice test that's available from College Board. It's also available on Khan Academy. And so go ahead and dive in. Use that material to help guide you, okay? And so once you've done this, notice at the end of each day, correct your work. And there are explanations for every question. If you see a concept show up more than once, then it's something you need to write out as a weakness. But don't forget to highlight your strengths. It can feel really daunting looking at this stuff. You go, oh my gosh, I'm looking at these things and I just feel like I missed so many questions, but there are also questions you're getting right. So give yourself credit for that. Know where your strengths are because that's going to be the thing that helps offset that oh, here we go again. So, just make sure you're giving yourself nice pats on the back. Be kind to yourself. Okay. Day 3 is your concept brush up. So basically, you're going to take all of the assessment that you've written out about your first 2 days, and notice these are done. The math in particular is done at your own pace. Don't worry about the timing yet. Up here, try and do it in that timing, but you can give yourself a little grace period. And then you're going to use free resources to help you. So Khan Academy has some great resources. I know some students don't like the way that they teach. So if that's you, then Math is Fun is a good one. There's also purplemath.com. Grammarbook.com is fantastic. It's really dialed into the kind of stuff you're going to see on this test. So make sure you do that. And good old YouTube search can help you tremendously. If you go, I stink at X, go onto YouTube, search for X tips or X teaching or whatever, and you will find a lot of videos on that. That's something that I want to start doing more of in the future. It's just been a little crazy over here, getting the courses out the door. So in the future, hopefully you'll be able to find more from me on that front. All right. And then day 4, you take the full length timed PSAT. All right. So this is the only PSAT practice test that I know of on the market. And I'm very big on using official materials. All right. So use those materials as best you can. This comes from College Board. Might not be perfect, but it's as close as we're going to get. And then day 5, most important step, take a full hour to go and pull that test apart and figure out, what went well. Again, what could be done better. So use that time well. If you find you need some teacher support on that, that's a great time to maybe go in and address your math teacher or your English teacher during their office hours if they're able to help you if you're really stumped. But rely on, you could do a group study. If your friends are dedicated as you are, you could do that. And as I send this replay out, please feel free to share this with them. This might be something that would be beneficial for them. And then you guys could do like the 5-day study together. That could be, I was going to say fun. I don't know if fun's the right word, but it could be enlightening and helpful. So if you do want some additional practice, these PSAT practice questions will help you. Take note, they use the exact same page for PSAT practice questions as they do for SAT. So the essay is listed there, but that's only because it's both SAT and PSAT. So know that there is no essay on this test. You do not have to worry about that. So I know I have a question from Storm about that, so we're going to get to that right now. But before we do, I just want to make sure I say thank you to all of you for joining me. I'm going to shut down the sheet here and turn the camera back on. But I really appreciate you being here by taking some time this evening to really focus on what's out there and some tips that can really help you succeed. I hope that you found this stress busting as opposed to adding things to the list of all the many to-dos you guys have. But please feel free to hang out, ask questions, put them in the Q&A, please, if possible. And if you guys do have any questions, the college checklist is a great resource. I also do free 20-minute consultations. So if you're worried about the next steps, like, okay, we're going to do the PSAT, but this isn't the test that gets you into college. I want to know more about the ACT, the SAT, when to take it. I encourage everybody sophomore year and higher to have a testing timeline laid out. Doesn't mean you have to get started right away, but have a sense of when you're going to test. So if you need help on that front, there is a podcast episode about it. It's episode 42. So if you go to higherscorestestprep.com/42, you can find that in podcast form. If you'd prefer to have a conversation, you can sign up for a free testing timeline consultation. I can help you sort of figure out the best season in which to test based on your student's academics, or if you're the student, your academics, and also your activities schedule, and of course your AP and IB testing. It will never fail to surprise me how many juniors I get who are testing for the first time in the spring of their junior year on top of APs and IB tests. It's like the worst thing ever. They're just in this vortex of heck, and I do not like seeing students there. So I want to help you. I want to really, help you move forward in a way that is at least stressful to you, but helps you get a test you're proud of by the end of your junior year. because that summer between junior and senior year is when you start to finalize your college lists. So it's good to have a test. You might test again, but it's good to have a test you're proud of before that. So if you need help with that, please let me know. Another thing I will say, well, the PSAT, hold on. I'm going to turn my camera back on because this is that important. I'm going to stop. Alrighty. While the PSAT is a practice test, the SAT and ACT are not, and they can show up on your transcripts. They can show up on the report you send to college, so never wing it. That is something that I really don't recommend. There are free resources out there you can take to get that baseline score. You can do it for free at your kitchen table. Don't pay 50, 60 bucks to then potentially shoot yourself in the foot. I don't have many students who have never tested before go in and give it a shot and feel like it goes well. It's usually why they end up talking to me. I'm sure it happens for some students, but I just want to make sure you guys know that. So to that end, I am going to type in, if you go to higherscorestestprep.com/15 free, there are 15 free test prep tools on that page. 2 full-length SATs, 2 full-length ACTs. Side note, I'm not super pumped on the SAT. That's why I'm not teaching it yet. If you need it to verify your PSAT score, totally fine. But I'm really steering most students to the ACT right now. It's, I think, just a better test. So there are still some issues, I think, with the SAT. So if you guys want to talk more about that, you're welcome to join me. Also, my Facebook page, I'm going to type that in here. I do a live show every Tuesday. I'm on a 2-week hiatus. I'm coming back on the 18th of October, but I do a show called Test Prep Tuesday. So if you guys want to join me, you can come and ask questions. It's kind of like this, except no like screen share. I just present a little bit, like 10 minutes on a topic, either a helpful tip that I have or something that's going on in the world of test prep or college admissions. I share on that, and then we open to questions. So if you guys want to join me, you are welcome to do so. And thank you, Storm. Yeah, my little Patronus protecting me back there. Okay. So, William, I think we answered your question. Topher, again, I think that was, you said, how about freshmen? And I think your question, what that was pertaining to was the average score. I think for like the PSAT 8-9 and the PSAT 10, they're scaling it to an appropriate level for your class. And they're, of course, curving it along your class members. So it should be roughly the same. You should be in that, 1,000 mark would be the average for each iteration, because the iterations grow and the students who are taking it are becoming more knowledgeable. So hopefully that is helpful to you. William, if you want to see kind of an equivalent for the ACT, my ACT cram plan is somewhat similar to this. It's $37. I don't recommend it. If you want to do full, I shouldn't say I don't recommend it. I recommend it for students who are really short on time. Like you've got 1 week and you gotta go. Totally fine. But for full prep, which if you're here, you probably are looking for, I would recommend my quick prep, which is solely strategy based. We really dial in the strategies for each and every section. My complete package is like a 75-hour course. It's everything I teach my tutoring students. We have group online meetings where I can answer your questions. So I don't do webinars on that. You're welcome, Brooklyn. My pleasure. Alrighty. So Storm, I see you saying, elaborating on what Sam was pointing out, would you be marked down for the essay on the SAT? I know from experience that spelling isn't my strong suit. What would you suggest to help? So spelling shouldn't be a huge issue, but note, there's no essay here. But spelling shouldn't be an issue for the SAT unless it's hugely distracting. So using words you're sure of as opposed to language that you're trying to kind of reach beyond, maybe what you're most comfortable with. If there's a word you really like to use and you're a little shaky on the spelling, then maybe you have a bank of words that you really practice to make sure that you can drop them in, and not hurt your score. Generally speaking, If you are feeling like you're unsure of particular words, then back off. That said, it's more about the flow of ideas. So long as, the occasional spelling error doesn't get in the way of you presenting your ideas, it shouldn't be a problem. All right. So Maya is asking about the old SAT. So you took it in your sophomore year. Can you still apply to college with those scores? Okay. So Maya, if you are a senior, uh, then I believe that will be okay at most colleges. Every college's policy is different, and I've heard of some that won't. I think there was one in Vermont that came out against that. If you're a junior, it's even less likely that the old SAT will be able to be used. So, what I would oh, you're a junior. Okay. Um, I would call. I would call the schools you're most interested in and see what their policy is going to be. The tricky thing here is that the college might change their policy. Um, and the SAT is so different now that even if they accept the new SAT, which every college to my knowledge is accepting, they might not accept that. So I like to cover my bases. I like to make sure that I'm not going to have any surprises on the other end. So you can either do your due diligence now, and I would get it in writing. I would call and then maybe say, can I follow up with you with an email and just get this confirmed? Because it's easy for someone to say yes and for them to just hang up the phone and never think about you again. It's different when you can say, this is the information that was handed to me from your college admissions office. So I would do your due diligence and get it in writing. But be aware that's going to be a tough thing to address if they do in fact change their policy. So that's tricky. I'm sorry. I liked the old SAT. And technically all scores are live and valid for 5 years, but how colleges use them is a different story. It's totally up to them. So yeah, I would again do your due diligence, but my gut saying, and I hate to say it, I really do, but my gut is saying you might want to have another full test, either SAT or ACT. I'm recommending ACT this year under your belt. Alrighty. So, Kaylee, I am not doing another webinar. This is the one. So spread it far and wide. Tell your friends, give them access to it. And again, they'll have access to the replay as well as the Strategies for Success worksheet. I'm sorry. These next 2 weeks are slammed. I'm like out of town basically the entire time, which is why I did it so early. So I apologize. And then Spencer, what is your advice for wandering attention? Great question. This is going to happen. And I think a lot of students, they feel like it shouldn't happen and they get mad at themselves. And I totally get it. Like this is a long test. It's hard to focus for that long. And it's going to happen. You're going to drop out. The biggest thing you can do is put your pencil down. So many students feel like they have to fight through it. And I think that's exactly the wrong thing. I think you got to go, whoa, this is my body, my brain telling me that I need something. And that something is not filling in another bubble, right? So I put my pencil down. I close my eyes. I go to Tahiti or Jamaica or whatever. I actually go to Hawaii. That's where my husband and I went on our honeymoon. So that's where I go. You can go wherever you want. But close your eyes. Deep breath. I always kind of stretch my hands, roll my wrists out because Lord knows your hands are probably tired at that point. And I do it every time I disengage with the text because if you continue to fight through it, you're going to hurt your score. Accuracy is greater than speed. So that actually gives you the benefit of kind of leaning back. I use this a lot on the ACT as well. And I use it early and often because that science section at the end is so grueling that if I have not taken care of myself all the way through, then by the time I get there, I'm tapped out, I'm done. So really, as soon as you start to feel yourself pull away from the test, give yourself 15 seconds, 20 seconds. It'll feel like a lifetime, but again, it's kind of like I was saying earlier, it puts you in control. And really, as long as it helps you do better work, then that's what's needed. Absolutely, Spencer. Hawaii. Alrighty. William, no, your PSAT will not show up on your transcript. Colleges are not allowed to see that score. If it is on your transcript, then that's a goof on the part of your high school. And that's according to College Board themselves. So if there's any question about that, verify with your school that it won't be on there. But the official information from College Board themselves is that colleges shouldn't see it or should not be able to see it. You can probably choose to divulge it in, on your resume or whatever, but yeah, they shouldn't be able to access it without your permission. Kaylee, you said, do you take the SAT in 10th grade? You can. I use math and a student's activities schedule to determine when they should test. So if you have questions, please, by all means, get in touch. And I'm happy to help you decide kind of when the best time is for you. Every student's different. And, so many students wait until spring of their junior year. And I think it's just historically that's when students have tested, but it's not necessarily the best time. Oh, Joy, you're very welcome. I'm looking forward to chatting tomorrow. Awesome. So glad you were able to make it. Thank you. So yeah, Kaylee, get in touch and I can help you. And Sam, is the new SAT a lot different from the ACT? It is and it isn't. So the new SAT is more similar to the ACT than the old SAT was. But there are some things that are still kind of make it unique. The essays are dramatically different. So the essays for the ACT are more like a synthesis essay for AP English, if you're familiar with that. So there are 3 different perspectives. You're stating your perspective and you're sort of addressing all of the complexities of the argument and addressing those 3 other perspectives. So, you're saying this is my thought, but here's some of the challenges of my way of thinking. But even so, it's still a strong argument. And obviously you do it better than that. The SAT essay is more of the rhetorical analysis essay from the AP. So you get a passage and you have to assess how convincing that argument is using sort of how persuasive were they with their language usage and whatnot. So for my money, the SAT is a lot harder, their essay. There's also the math section without a calculator. And then I'm not a fan of the cross-disciplinary measures being kind of woven in on the SAT. So, where you have the science section on the ACT, here you're having science questions in the middle of your reading passages, which, yeah, sure, that's an important skill. But for my mind, if I'm picking the test, I like the ACT more. Timing's a little stauncher on the ACT. So, it is faster, but when accuracy is greater than speed, and nearly every student struggles with the timing on the ACT, when you reclaim that and you do your best work up to a certain threshold, where you hit your target scores. And I help students figure out exactly how many questions they need to answer to hit their quota to get their score. I like the ACT. I think you got more control there. But the new SAT is still kind of going through growing pains. So that's something that, you just have to sort of weigh. Like I said, I saw kind of big shifts from the May test to this one. The pendulum swinging pretty far. And so I want the pendulum to swing here. So, I want to keep my range of what I am expecting to see pretty narrow so that I have a pretty good sense of what I'm going to see. That's just my 2 cents though. If you want to go ahead and take the practice test, then you certainly can. Sam, yes. Okay. So the essays are optional for colleges to require them. Colleges can change their policies. You might decide, you might have a list and then you go, oh, but I want, and you go, nobody requires it. Great. I'm going to take it without the essay. And then 3 months later you go, and I'm going to add that college in and oh shoot, they need the essay. You have to go in and take the test again. So my kind of firm rule of thumb is just always suck it up, do the extra 40, 50 minutes. Again, as long as family budget is not the concern. Um, you know, I just would hate for you to get your very best multiple choice score and then have it not count at a college because you didn't take the essay. So that's my rule of thumb. So if you're going to take these tests, I would do it. So yeah, it doesn't affect your composite score. So your total scores will always be the same. So it's not like you have an advantage by taking the essay over someone who didn't at a school where it's not required. But I always do advise that you take it. I think it's really important. So, just to cover, I'm a cover my bases kind of girl. I don't want to have any surprises down the road because surprises mean stress. And when you have applications and you thought you were out of the woods with testing and you get sucked back in, that's not a fun realization. So I just try and help students avoid that by advising that you take it. You can choose to do whatever you want. I'm very much like every family needs to do what's right for them. So, but I wouldn't do it just because you don't want to take the essay because you might end up having to take it anyway. Alrighty, so Kaylee, for preparing for the PSAT, I've heard different theories about what you should do the days leading up to it. Some say you should eat, sleep, and study more. Others say you should keep your normal schedule, but still study more. You guys are all working so hard. The fact that you're here just shows that you're going above and beyond. So if you can create room in your schedule by looking ahead and getting that essay done by, if you're taking the test on Wednesday, getting the essay done so it's turned in on Monday and you don't have to worry about it. And you can take some time off and read a good book and go to bed early the week before. Ideally, yeah, I would love to see that. I know that's not reality for a lot of my students. So I think you do what feels right for you. So I know for myself, preparing fully and then stepping back is very helpful for me. If I've been studying to the last minute, I don't do as well. That's not the case for some students. Some students feel like they have to study to the last minute, otherwise they're going to fail. And then that mental story, what they told themselves, ends up proving true on the test. So do what's right for you. I think it's great that you're doing research and getting different opinions, but just like with college admissions, just like looking at college admissions and going, I have so many different options and different paths to get into college. What works for me? You have so many different ways to get to a higher score. What works for you? So really put it through the lens of what you need, Kaylee, and all of you should be doing it through the lens of what you need. I've given you 5 days of study. I think that's sufficient and appropriate given what you can get out of this test. My advice for the SAT and ACT is a lot different. It's a lot more work because it matters more. So kind of keep it all in perspective. Sometimes you kind of have to shut out what other people are saying because sometimes people will make it super frenzied and sometimes people don't care at all. Those are kind of really extreme ends of the spectrum. Find where you fit in that and then just trust that what you've done is enough. So that's the other thing, is doing the work and then letting it go and going, I'm showing up. I know my lines. I'm stepping onto stage and here I go. So that would be my advice on that front. And then Maya, is the PSAT out of 15-20 because it doesn't cover as many concepts as the SAT? Should I expect about the same score as the PSAT if I take the SAT in the future? So I think they've done a nice adjustment on the PSAT. So I believe that I don't know why they do it. I think that what you get on the PSAT should about align with what you get on the SAT. Sometimes it skews a little higher, so you have to expect it to drop a bit. But I think because of that margin now, it might be tracking better. The danger here, College Board is really not being transparent about their scores, about what's available. The comparisons to the ACT scores are all whacked out because they didn't talk to ACT about it. So statistics and the data behind this test, it's really shoddy. So it's kind of hard for me to answer that because I don't feel like I have the full picture. I don't feel like I'm getting everything from them. And frankly, my May test, I still don't have my questions and answer service back where I get the booklet and I get my answer service. So I'm really struggling because I don't have data to work with. And that's how I teach my students. I work from data, I work from past tests. And that's why, because I don't have that for the ACT, or for the SAT rather, that's why I'm stepping back from it. So I apologize that I can't answer that more appropriately or more clearly. We're just kind of in the dark, which is why I'm like, hey, let's just do the best we can. And what we can then use are the percentiles to sort of help us jump over to what you might get on the ACT. And from there, I can help you. That's sort of where I am on that. And Reese, your response to Kaylee, I just want to make it really clear, really quick. You can't take your PSAT in 12th grade. Okay. So, I just want to make sure that that's clear for everybody. Last year, you take the PSAT is 11th grade in fall. The SAT, yes. But again, PSAT, I don't recommend studying for it for more than a couple weeks because the numbers there are staggering. 1.6 million take it, 7,500 get scholarship dollars. There's a lot more money in an SAT or ACT score. Put your eggs in that basket if you have to pick. Oh, you guys, you are so amazing. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm getting a lot of thank you posts. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'm so glad that you find this helpful. That's why I do it. I really love helping you guys. So that's like the best thing I could see. Thank you. So Reese, would it be smart to go over the verbal practice section since you're not that good at English and grammar? Yeah, absolutely. You want to balance it with what you want to focus on your strengths and your weaknesses. I see a lot of students, they're tempted to do one or the other. Just go to your strengths, just go to your weaknesses. At the end of the day, this is a sum, right? So you're adding two pieces together. If you can get extra points on either side, who cares, right? Get it wherever you can get it from. So if you know that you have a weakness, that's the place to hone in and really focus. But at the same time, if you have a strength, that sort of helps balance the kind of, the dread and doom of doing the thing you hate with the thing you're actually good at. So, find balance in it. All right. And then Sam, even though you take your time, do you usually finish? Like not just fill in the extra bubbles you didn't get to, but do you normally get to every question and answer all of them? I do, but I should be able to because I teach this stuff. So, the thing is my goal every time I go in to take it is a 99th percentile score. I usually get it. So I'm usually a 35 on the ECT. 2380 on the SAT was, that's sort of where I am. I should be. This is what I do. That's not what every student should be. And so kind of going back to the data points and sort of what I was sharing there, I tell students like, hey, if you want to get, if your goal is a 26 on the ACT, here are the numbers you need to get there. Answer X amount in this section that's stronger for you and answer X amount of questions over here in this section that's weaker for you. And we can, as I punch my microphone, you can toggle them, however you need to get to your final result. I can't do that yet because I don't have the data for the SAT. So yes, I do finish. Yes, if you are going for that national merit, you're going to need to finish or get very close, like within a couple of questions. I think I just did the breakdown from what I could see, and I think it's about 2 to 3 questions that you have a little give on. That's about margin of error. So you should be trying to get through nearly every question in every section if you are aiming for those really top marks. If you're doing this to just see how you do, then trust yourself to just get in there and do your best work and let the chips fall where they may. If it's really a no stress, true practice test for you. So that's my feedback there. A mentee asks, a mentee, you're all over the place. You're on Test Prep Tuesday. You're in my inbox. Here you are. It's so good to see you. What kind of book do I suggest for the new ACT? All right. So for those of you who aren't aware, the ACT did shift. The final iteration of the new test sort of happened last September. They recently changed the testing, the scoring for the essay, but the essay prompt stayed the same. So all of the materials generally pretty good that's coming out from ACT in particular. There's not a ton of tests for the ACT. So the other thing I use, I'm looking over there, I have the McGraw-Hill ACT 2017 book. If you work with me, just caveat, if you work with me and you do the complete prep program, I send you these books along with my workbook that I've created. So don't go out and buy them if you're not planning to work with me, or if you are planning to work with me. But if you're not, then if you go to higherscorestestprep.com/Amazon, you can see all the books that I recommend. It's generally from the test maker. Please know there are some issues with books from the test maker too. I've been very frustrated and very vocally frustrated on the podcast lately of the issues with it, with all the different books. So I apologize on behalf of the test makers that the materials that I use aren't exceptional, because they're the best, but they're still not flawless. And so my students know that. Like, I'm very straightforward with where the issues and deficits are so that they're not surprised on test day. If anybody tells you there's an amazing test prep book out there, there's not. So just know that there's good, solid stuff that's going to help you. And then there's stuff that's really bad, especially for the SAT. Like, there are books that have copyrights that predate the first full length test that was released by College Board, and they are horribly wrong. They are guesstimates. The wording is off. I'm furious with some of my fellow prep companies that just decided to publish stuff. It's misleading, and I think a lot of them kind of took advantage of parents and students who were in a frenzy around the SAT. It's one of the other reasons that I'm not recommending the SAT, because a lot of the material isn't great. So just be careful. If you have questions about a book, feel free to shoot me an email and let me know which one you're thinking of, and I can tell you. But if you want to see my recommendations, higherscorestestprep.com/Amazon. It'll take you to an Amazon page where I have my stuff. Okay. I saw something pop up. Oh, Shannon, there it went. Woo! Okay. Does verify your score mean that the student has to take the full SAT to prove that their PSAT score is valid? Yes, because cheating scandals, the PSAT is handled by in-state schools. I do not imagine, or not in-state schools, state by state by the different high schools. Some states are now using it as their like benchmark graduation requirement. I don't think the cheating is going away. I don't think it's going to get better. I think it's going to get worse, if anything. So the reason that you have to verify your score is to prove that you weren't in a testing room where a teacher was feeding answers. So Spencer, sorry, I get a little scattered with these live things because I've got questions popping up all over. Sorry, Shannon, I'm going to finish your question. Spencer, I'll get to you in a second. So verifier score means that yes, and that's the exception. So what I wait for is to see a student that has a national, has the selection index score that's in the range for their state that they will likely be commended or named a semifinalist. At that point, I say you're the one exception that I'm advising takes the SAT, the full length SAT. That doesn't mean that has to be your college admissions test, by the way. The fact of the matter is that you can take the ACT as well, even if you take the SAT. So you might want to take two. This is definitely a family by family decision. How much testing your family wants to invest in. Tests are important. There is a lot of scholarship dollars. I'm having a student, a podcast released. He got $160,000 at a test optional school in scholarships. And his mom said, I think a lot of it came down to the fact that he did your course and got a higher score. You know, obviously that's anecdotal, but at the same time, if you know how to do college search with scholarship dollars in mind, there's a lot of money on the line. There's less with the PSAT. So, you know, you just have to balance it and decide how full tilt you want to go, what level your student is at. And please don't think that when I say that you can get scholarship dollars, that it just means if you have a 90th percentile score. It doesn't. If you have there's a school where if you go from a 21 to a 23 and you have the requisite GPA, you can get something like $60,000 over 4 years. It's not a small chunk of change, and it's not for tippy top scores. So just again, keeping it all in perspective, how far you want to go down this road with SAT and national merit is totally up to you. I just like to make sure students and families have the information so they can make the right choice for themselves. So that's always my goal, and I'm happy to talk you through my reasoning behind things if you have questions. Just because I think that's important is that you understand where my advice is coming from, and then you can choose whether to take it or leave it. And so that I'm never offended if parents and students decide to go a different direction. I just want to make sure you have the best information possible. Alrighty. And Kim, are we required to put 4 college choices on the PSA and the PSAT? So is that a bit of a perk to those colleges? I do put down that I'm interested in their school as an 11th grader. Also, with my PSAT scores be automatically uploaded to these choices. Okay, I don't know. I have to be honest. I don't know about naming colleges on the PSAT. You can on the SAT, and those are free reports that you can send. Um, you're sending blind, which if you have never done a test and you're just going in to take it, and you know that it's going to certain schools, I don't like doing it. I want to see what my score is, because the other thing that happens, I have a lot of students who come out of tests feeling panicky, and they actually do great because they were on edge and they were like really focused and they were fighting through it the whole time and they leaned into it. So that is something to keep in mind, that sometimes how you feel about a test. I also have students who come out feeling super confident and then they're like, what happened? So it can go either way. I don't like listing it. I also like sending full packages. Like, here's my admissions package. There are other ways to demonstrate interest, like going to college fairs, information nights, and scheduling college visits. So I would do that before I send my scores. I just don't like it. I don't like not having control. If you haven't been able to tell from this whole conversation, my whole issue with the SAT is I have zero control. I can't help students because I don't know how to, because I can give you these general strategies, but in terms of actually saying, if you want X score, here's how you get there, I can't do that because I don't have the data. So that's me. So that's just where I come from. Alrighty. Spencer, my email's really easy. It's Lauren, Lauren, at higherscorestestprep.com. Okay, so my name at higher, or you can just do hello at higherscorestestprep.com. There's no one else comes to me. So yeah, absolutely. You can go ahead and get in touch. Also, my phone number's at the bottom of the strategies for success. So if you'd prefer to chat, feel free. Alrighty, Sam, you say you have to verify your scores because they want to make sure you didn't cheat or that the teacher wasn't feeding you answers. What if you're in a room where the teacher is giving you answers and you don't cheat? It's just a policy. You have to verify your scores. You have to verify that you can do it on a full-length test, what you did on a PSAT. And they do not vary on that. It's unfortunate because I totally get it. Like, I was that kid. I was on the like nerd fest, guys. I was on the anti-cheating task force in high school. I don't stand for that. I never did as a student. I still don't. And yet it's happening. Schools get busted every year, and it's just so frustrating to me because it makes for extra work for you. But unfortunately, that's, a couple of people spoil it for everybody, and that's sort of the policy that they have in place. Now, their motivation might actually be different than that. I don't see how it could be. I mean, maybe they're just trying to see that lightning doesn't strike twice, but I think it has to be to verify that students can actually do it and that there's no cheating. So I'm sorry, but that's just the policy. So yeah. Okay, so Maya asked a question. Do you get access to the Common App in the summer of your junior year? I'm looking to apply for early decision. Okay, Maya, I just did an episode on Common App, episode 84, higherscorestestprep.com/84. There have been some issues with Common App where they clear the database. I think they're doing it in a different way now, but I would go to their site, commonapp.com, and see when it opens for you. I know that they're releasing the personal statements like in January. So I would think as soon as the personal statements are available, that you would be able to get in and create your account. Not to say that you should be applying in January of your junior year. Please don't misunderstand me. But I would just verify with the company itself. Go straight to the biggest thing I can give you as a part of this is to always go straight to the source. Go to the college you want to go to and ask their admissions office the question that you want to ask, because there's a lot of great general rules of thumb. There are a lot of great bits of advice that you can glean from listening to podcasts and from going to blogs and whatnot. But the bottom line is, if you have a school in mind, that's the source for you. And there are so many thousands of great colleges that's where you should be going for your information. So similarly, with the Common App, a great tool for college admissions, get in there and do that now. And ask them directly. You can tweet them. I'm sure they're responsive on Twitter, and you can get information there. Okay? Whew. Guys, we were here for like an hour and a half. This happens every year. I think it's going to be an hour. It's going to be great. And, bada bing, bada boom. Oh my gosh, it's been 2 hours. Oh, good Lord. Sorry if this was boring for you guys, but I've had so much fun getting to know you and chat with you and answer your questions. Please know I'm here to be a resource to you. Please get in touch. You have my email address, lauren@higherscorestestprep.com. You can come over to the Facebook page. Come on Tuesdays. Come to Test Prep Tuesday. It's a live show at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern. I'm there every week starting again on October 18th, and it's a blast. We're going to have a lot of fun, and I just do a little presentation, and then we hang out and I answer questions, kind of like this. So if you guys would like to join in, if you're on my list, which you are now, please keep your eyes open. I do send out a little reminder about half an hour to an hour before. So you guys are so welcome. It is my pleasure. And I am so grateful to you for all coming. So please, when you get the replay, the one thing I ask, share it. This is a free resource. Let's get it out to as many students as possible, because this is so stressful. And the last thing I want is for a student out there to feel like there's not anything for them to go to that can help them. The internet is a beautiful thing. So let's make sure this gets out far and wide. And I just so appreciate your guys' time and attention. And if you have any follow-up questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. If you want help coming up with the steps beyond PSAT, please sign up for a testing timeline consultation. We'll pop on the phone, we'll chat, and we'll get to know one another, and I'll give you advice on how to take the next steps forward. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you hopefully sooner than next year's episode, or edition rather, of the PSAT review. Thanks again, guys. Have a good night.